In this one-to-one, we will talk about how the financial crime compliance training sector has evolved with time, what type of qualifications can support your career in this industry, and much more. As part of my financial crime leaders interview sessions, today I have the pleasure of interviewing Mateo Jarrin Cuvi from the International Governance and Compliance Association. Mateo is IGCA's Global Manager for Partners and Media. So without further ado, let's start this week's conversation with Mateo Jarrin Cuvi. Mateo, welcome to FinCrime Agent. How are you today?
Thank you, Marco, for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here and represent IGCA. I'm doing great and looking forward to our discussion today.
Fantastic. Yeah, me too. Can you please share with our audience, maybe to start, a bit of your background and let us know what you're up to in these days?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Basically, by trade, I am a content guy. I've been a content writer, content manager, and that's kind of where I have dedicated my professional life to these days. I've worked with Forex broker. I've worked with an international tax network too. Always developing content and organizing webinars and interviews and writing blog posts and doing a lot of the kind of content-driven material. My background is in political science and sociology, specializing in Latin America. So right now, I do have a passion for Latin America and everything that's happening in that region of the world. So if anyone is interested in reaching out to me about compliance issues in Latin America or kind of developing that with IGC, I'd be happy to do that. For the past 4 months, I've been working as the global manager for partners and media at the International Governance and Compliance Association. It's a role that basically has me reaching out to people to establish partnerships, to work with media such as FinCrime Agent, and to kind of getting the word out there that IGCA is around, that we offer certifications, trainings, and also a network for professionals in the GRC area. So that's kind of my background. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to kind of get in touch and answer those.
Perfect. Thank you so much for expanding on your background. Let's get started with the interview and talk a bit, going into the details a bit more on training and education. Those are key elements to ensure that professionals that are operating in the AML industry and financial crime remains up to date. This is particularly applicable, I think, in a constantly evolving environment like the one we operate in regulatory compliance and in FinCrime especially. Could you please give us an overview of the key benefits of financial crime compliance training when those are rolled out at the higher level, at the executive level, for example?
First of all, we have to actually point out the importance that executives have in shaping an organization's culture, a culture of transparency, ethical behavior, and compliance. It all starts from the top, basically. The buckle stops with the executive leaders, with upper management, etc. And it's a trickle-down process from there. So basically, executives have to set the example. They have to set the pace. They have to set the strategies that basically will allow the company to, remain compliant, remain transparent, remain ethical. At the same time, basically, executives have to realize that they are being held accountable if anything goes wrong or if anything suspicious happens. And to prevent this, all executives must know their obligations to their organization's regulators and also the stakeholders. And they must also have a thorough understanding of the risks of non-compliance for their organization. Here's, for example, something where ESG comes into play. We're talking about environment, social, and governance issues that are very kind of trending these days. And, a lot of organizations have put a lot more emphasis on this, to focus on governance, to focus on social issues, to focus on the environment, things that stakeholders are really, really, clamoring for. They're asking companies to focus on. So within this kind of framework, I think it's crucial for executive directors or, CEOs or upper management to actually, acquire the competence, acquire the training, acquire the knowledge and the education when it comes to corporate governance issues and how to develop appropriate processes. A lot of this is done through experience, but it doesn't hurt, for example, to, every so often do a certification, do some training as a refresher or as a way of, keeping up to date with what's happening in the industry. So, I mean, I think, given the responsibilities that upper management and CEOs have, I think this is primordial. This is something crucial. This is something that, it's kind of a win-win situation to actually go through these trainings as an executive director or, CEO, etc.
Absolutely, I agree 100%, and thank you for answering that. I want to ask you something on a different level for people on a earlier stage of their career, as I often receive a lot of comments regarding the first steps to take for a career in financial crime prevention or in the AML space. To those in the audience that are new to the industry and are keen to develop a career in this sector, which type of certificates or financial crime compliance training course would you advise them to take?
Yeah, I mean, now we're going to look at it from the other level, I guess, a recent graduate or someone who wants a career change, basically, what is the use of these sort of certifications and education and training programs? I mean, there are ample opportunities in this sector. Many jobs are being created in compliance in AML and KYC, onboarding, reporting, etc. on a daily basis. We have the growth of fintech, of regtech, which are growing exponentially. I mean, in terms of all of these technological solutions that are popping up in the market. And as a result, regulatory authorities are also actually getting in on the game and actually creating a lot more regulations that these companies have to follow. You look at payment solutions and all of the compliance that they have to actually comply with, I guess. So, there are a lot more checks and controls to do these days. Thus, basically, jobs are expanding in the area. Since there's this expansion to, I mean, what you have or what you start seeing is you have subunits within a compliance function. I mean, you have people that specialize in AML. You have people that specialize in KYC or CDD. You have people who specialize on onboarding, on reporting, on monitoring, on all these different issues. So, I mean, one way to look at it is, if you want to enter the compliance function, you could strictly focus on AML and become a specialist in AML to join, the compliance department for a specific company. At the same time, I mean, there is going to be a sort of crossing of knowledge and skills. It is also useful to actually have a kind of comprehensive, a global perspective on everything that entails compliance. And, in this way, a professional in this area will be able to actually carry out their duties in a more effective, thorough, and responsible way. So, I mean, it really depends on what direction you want to take. I mean, you can be very specialized, say only specialize in monitoring or KYC or compliance or sanctions or whatnot. Or you can take a more global, more holistic approach and do something more general, which, would kind of focus on compliance, which touches upon all these other different issues. Right now, for example, the International Governance and Compliance Association, we have certificates in AML, in KYC, CDD, in compliance, and also in international economic sanctions with a focus on compliance in that case. And in 2022, we're going to be rolling out certificates in ESG, in corporate governance, and in risk management. So, whether it's with IGCA or with some other association that does similar work, I mean, it's useful for, I think, a young graduate who's interested in these areas to, actually kind of wet their feet by taking one of these certificates, which kind of introduces them to this area, provides them with a solid background to, actually kick off their career in the GRC world. I think in combination with that, what I think recent graduates have to do is also focus on CPDs, on continuing professional development. Okay, so that means, on an annual basis. And generally, when you're a member of an organization like IGCA, you have to kind of follow a regime in which you actually have to take, certain hours of CPD credits, on a yearly basis. So, that will also kind of build your knowledge and build your skills and the tools that you will actually need to carry out your jobs. At the same time, actively participate in an association, such as IGCA. Do some networking, follow the news, keep up to date with everything that is happening in the industry. And this is something that an association like IGCA can help a young professional do. So that's kind of, the way I see it and the way, I would suggest a young professional, recent graduate, or someone, looking for a career change to go about it, but the opportunities are out there and they're really, really great. this sector.
It's a fantastic tip I think you shared in here. And I think lots of your points are super valuable, and I hope people will listen to your advices. So definitely, if I can recap, start with something that will give you a broader knowledge of the sector, then pick maybe one area of interest where you can do a deep dive, and lastly, remain informed. So do ongoing trainings once you are in the sector, and stay interested about the industry so you are always in the loop with so many changes that are going on. So great tip, thank you so much. And one other aspect I wanted to check for those people that are new to the sector, based on your experience, is there like a specific background that may be required to develop a career in financial crime?
I don't think there is a specific background per se. I know a lot of the people who actually enter this sector, they're either going to be lawyers or, you know, accountants or political scientists or someone doing criminology or something along those lines, which it tends to work in that direction. But I don't think you necessarily need to have that background. I mean, I could very easily see an English literature major, you know, deciding that, you know, working in compliance and working in fin crime is something for them, you know, with the use of communication and language and whatnot. But yeah, in our case, I mean, we see a lot of different backgrounds. There are certain characteristics or qualities that a person involved in fin crime needs to have. If you're either going to be in compliance or in AML or any of these sort of sectors. If you're working for private companies, let's say, or for businesses, I mean, you need to have a good understanding of a company's business, its products, its services, its offerings. You also have to have a very good understanding of your company's role within the larger globe, within the larger scope of things. You know, how does a company fit in the global economy? How it interacts with other markets, etc. You need to have a good understanding of the stakes involved. You know, what are the main risks or the main challenges that are going to be faced by this company on a daily basis, and what is going to happen if, you know, these are not handled correctly. And also you have to, as we mentioned already, you have to keep up to date with what's happening in the market. Again, you have to be familiar with the company's overall strategy. You have to find a way of aligning the compliance function with the overall business. You have to understand the potential risks to anticipate them. So to be able to do this, I guess compliance officers or people in AML and financial crime prevention, you have to be terrific listeners. Okay, you have to understand basically the pressure points between the business and the law. And you're going to have to work with many different departments within a business to kind of accommodate the needs that each one of them have. I'll give you an example, you know, working from my personal experience when I was doing content for a Forex company. Yeah. That basically there was always a sort of clash between the marketing department and the compliance department, because the marketing department, I mean, their goal is to actually get people to trade, and the compliance is okay, yes, but you have to fall in with a very strict set of rules. So, you know, if you're going to be in compliance and you want to carry out that role, you have to be able to, you know, convince marketing that, okay, you can't do that. You have to do things in a specific way. You have to basically try to influence business so that it works within the lines. And, you know, sometimes you're going to have to take decisions that are unpopular or that are difficult, but that are necessary, you know, to prevent any sort of illicit behaviors or illegal activities or whatnot. At the same time, I mean, I think any sort of compliance officer or AML person, professional, should be skilled at designing simple and understandable processes and procedures. I mean, you have to be able to put together a plan, you know, a financial prevention plan, an AML plan, a compliance plan that is easy to understand, that you're going to basically share with the rest of your organization. And you have to be able to relate information in a clear, you know, effective, in a way that can be actually implemented fairly quickly and easily. So, I mean, I think these are sort of the things that, you know, any sort of person in fin crime has to kind of have. But yeah, I mean, the laundry list of qualities after that, I mean, it really extends. But that's kind of where I would see the most important, you know, points are.
Fantastic, that's terrific. Thank you, Matteo. And changing a little bit the angle of the questions we are talking about now, I just wanted to touch base on the current situation that we are facing as part of the pandemic. Unfortunately, the world has gone through some big changes in the last couple of years, and since the COVID-19 pandemic started, how certifications and financial crime compliance training in the regulatory compliance sector has evolved? Have you seen any changes to this?
I mean, in terms of training, I mean, we have to talk about technology first, but I know we have another technology question later on in the interview, so I'm gonna, set that aside. But basically, one of the things that you see, for example, during the past 2 years is the number of hacking, of cybersecurity threats, of cybersecurity risks that have actually popped up because people are working remotely, people are working from their homes, people have more time on their hands just sitting in front of the computer at home because they can't go out and this, that, the other. You have this increase in cyber breaches, I would say. And this is something that companies have had to focus on, either by bringing solutions, either by providing more training to their employees. So this is something that I think COVID has actually ramped up and that more companies are paying attention to. At the same time, I mean, during the past 5 years, what you see is a whole range of different regulations popping up. There's also a lot more automation in terms of, the job functions. So basically the level of complexity and the level of knowledge and the level of skills that any sort of compliance officer or AML officer need to have to carry out their job is expanding. I mean, it's growing. I mean, just to give you an example from my days back in international taxation, at an EU level right now, you have a lot more laws that have to be followed that are aimed to prevent tax evasion. So we have the UBOs, we have the ultimate beneficial owner roles that are being rolled out in Europe.
Yes.
So that's an additional compliance point that people have to be aware of. In the past, you had CRS, the Common Reporting Standard. You had FATCA. You have DAX 6 too, the EU regulation. That again, compliance officers have to be aware of these new regulations. They have to be aware of the changes. They have to keep up to date so that they can actually report on these and remain compliant. So I mean, this basically has created a huge need for further training of compliance officers in more areas. So basically, compliance is expanding and growing, and this need for constant training, this need for staying up to date, this need for acquiring new skills and tools, it's growing. And education is one way of doing that. And training is probably one of the better ways of actually staying compliant and having the knowledge to carry out your duties.
Another one which is probably very much connected to my previous question is in terms of technology, are the new technologies making life easier for people operating in the education and training space? And if yes, how those technologies are actually making the life easier?
I mean, I think there are pros and cons as with everything in life.
Yeah.
But I do think, given COVID and given what's happening, it is much easier now to actually carry out trainings. We have official training partners that do a lot of their training live online or self-paced online, and it's very convenient. I mean, you basically don't have to actually get on a bus or a train or a car or a plane to attend a conference. You basically sit in front of your computer, you log on to Zoom like we're doing right now, and you take a 5-hour course on DAX 6 or CRS or something else.
Yeah.
And at the same time, self-paced online, you could do it in the evenings. You could do it whenever you have a break, whenever you have an hour to spare, you can sit down and complete your training. So I mean, it has actually made it a lot easier for people to get trained and to actually acquire those new skills and tools and knowledge that they need. At the same time, technology has allowed a lot of organizations like ours to provide more engaging content for users and for their members. Another thing that actually has changed, I don't know if this is a generational issue, but with the new generations of the younger professionals, I mean, attention spans have actually decreased. People don't want to sit through a 2-hour lecture. They don't want to sit through a 5-hour course, basically, and time is of the essence. So basically, a lot of organizations have focused on, micro learning or bite-sized courses, 10-minute courses here and there that they can do in their spare time to actually get a flavor of, something that they need to maybe build on. And the last thing that I want to bring up here is, conferences. During the past 2 years, it's been amazing what organizations have been doing in terms of online conferences. A few months ago, IGCA was a media partner for EQS's European Compliance and Ethics Conference, and I was simply blown away by the level of the quality of the actual conference. I mean, they had a yoga session in the morning, so you can basically wake up, roll out of bed, you can log on to Zoom, log on, and you can do a yoga session. That you would sit down in front of your computer to actually carry out very high quality and very, well-respected speakers, and you could interact with, a lot of the sponsors. I mean, it was a very, very well put together conference, and a lot of organizations are doing this. So, you're saving money for your company. You don't have to travel, hotels, meals. At the same time, you're lowering your carbon footprint, which is good. So, I mean, there is a big future for virtual conferences and for these sort of online events. This, of course, does not take away from the fact that, sometimes it's much better to, meet in person and, actually interact and, have a chat over a beer or a coffee or something like that. But I mean, I think there's room for both of these models moving forward.
I agree 100%, and thank you for your insight in that space. I'm glad to see that the changes are bringing, in terms of technology, bringing benefits also to the educational space, and some example you brought up earlier that are quite amazing to see how the quality is improved in such a short period of time. Now, I just wanted we are almost at the end of the interview. I wanted to check with you, which financial crime area do you think is going to expand the most in the next 5 years? It's always a bit tricky to put together predictions, but just was interested to see your perspective, since you work in the education and you can probably have some more insight.
I mean, from my perspective, financial crime is continually evolving. I mean, it's always on the move, on the go. Criminals are following the latest trends. And, I can see an increase in using technology and cybercrime to achieve their goals. We've seen that with cybersecurity and, all the cyber breaches and hacks and phishing scandals that have, emerged during the past 2 years with COVID. I think digital currencies is a place that are going to continue to be exploited. I mean, if we're talking about, all the cryptocurrencies that are, largely unregulated, I mean, I think criminals are going to continue using that, just in the same way they used, Silk Road, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, I don't know. That's going to be continuously exploited, I think, by criminals. For example, just to give you an example, recently I saw a documentary on Vice on money mules about how basically, young kids not kids, but young adults in the UK are being hired via Snapchat to be money mules. I mean, they would have money deposited in their account and they would actually extract the money and then deliver it to someone and they would get a cut. And all of this is done via social media. So I think, technology is going to be a driving factor. I think cryptocurrencies are going to continue to play a role there. I mean, the fact is, financial crime is very innovative. I mean, they always have to try to stay a step ahead of the game, stay a step ahead of, the police and the regulatory authorities. And this kind of poses a problem for the compliance world because, it seems like we're always in a reactive position versus a proactive. So, I mean, I think part of what compliance officers and fin crime people have to do is try to, predict basically what's going to be the next step, what's going to be the next phase of financial crime, to be able to, set the tools and the skills that will actually prevent these things from happening, or at least curtailing them to a certain extent. So yeah, it's hard to predict, but I mean, it's a fascinating subject, and I'm looking forward to see what's going to happen within the next 5 years.
Thank you, Matteo. You definitely listed some I think very valid points and areas of concern that we will see more attention going into in the next few years. So lastly, if people want to get in touch with you to find out more, maybe about the financial crime compliance training programs rolled out by the IGCA, how they can contact you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to help. I'd be happy to actually, answer any questions and, provide more information on some of the offerings that we have as an association. Anyone can email me at Mateo, Mateo, at IGCA.org. That's IGCA.org. And, send me an email and I'd be happy to reply to your questions. We're also on social media. You can find us on Twitter. We're very active on Twitter. We're also very active on LinkedIn, Facebook, not as much, but I mean, we are on social media. So, you can contact us that way too.
Thank you, Matteo. I will leave some of your contacts in the description of this video so people will have a reference to get in touch with you. And I want to thank you, Matteo, for coming to speak at FinCrime Agent. Today was fantastic and a great pleasure to have you on my channel. And I hope we can chat again in the near future with more insight and industry updates also from your end.
Yes, thank you very much, Marco, for having me again. This has been a pleasure. It's been a wonderful experience and interview. And I hope I managed to, share some insight into, certifications and trainings and education and, within the compliance world. And, thanks again. I'd be happy to do this at some other point in the future.
Perfect. Thank you, Matteo. Thank you so much for your time. And with that, we got to the end of our discussion today with Matteo. If you haven't yet subscribed to FinCrime Agent, remember to click on the subscribe button so you will be notified as soon as new interviews like the one you just watched will go live on my channel. Lastly, thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed my video and until next time, see you soon.